The section that I mentioned a little bit ago, now I'll explicitly state what it is, section 524A3 of the Bankruptcy Code, says that if a debt is discharged in a bankruptcy, the creditor can never try to collect that debt either from the person who filed or from the afterward acquired community property of a couple if the other spouse didn't file. So what that means is that your spouse's income is protected from garnishment. The creditor can't go after it because the wages are community property. In order to really get a sense of what's going on here, because there is a bit of a wrinkle, it helps to know what happens. Now, this is in a community property state, and here in California, we are a community property state. When a couple gets married, all of their possessions get divided into three categories: the husband's separate property, the wife's separate property, and the community property. Now, I apologize to anybody who is not in a heterosexual marriage. This is not designed as an offense. It's just linguistically convenient here. All right. So what goes into these categories? Anything a spouse comes into the marriage with and anything a spouse inherits is that spouse's separate property. Everything else is community property. Now, on the day you get married, there is no community property. Why? Because everything you have, you're coming into the marriage with. But as the years roll by, oh, that broke, toss it out, let's get a new, how'd you pay for it? Well, I used my wages. It's community property. No, those are my wages. Well, let's see now. Did you inherit the wages? No. Did you come into the marriage with them? No. Then they are community property, and anything you buy with community property is community property. Now, why do we care? There are two contexts in which this becomes important. The first is a terribly, terribly sad situation. I hope it never happens to you. The couple is going their separate ways. As part of the dissolution, assets are divided. How's that done? Husband gets his separate property, wife gets her separate property, and the community property is divided 50-50 as much as possible. Now, there's usually some horse trading on this because, let's face facts, you're not going to take a chainsaw to a house. And if you are, you have bigger problems than your finances. As a matter of fact, I heard about a case in which there was a fellow that took a chainsaw to the house. So whatever was going on in that marriage, it was not pretty. But, you know, maybe you'll get the house and you'll pay me equalization payments for a number of years, that kind of thing. So the gist in that context, it's a 50-50 proposition with regard to the community property. The separate property, each spouse gets the separate property that belongs to that spouse. Okay. The other context is quite different, and that's in dealing with third-party creditors. So how does this work? Well, husband has a debt to ABC Bank. ABC Bank's drumming its fingers on the table. Hey, when are you going to pay? He's just not paying. What can ABC Bank do? Well, I think we can all agree that ABC Bank can go after husband's separate property because, after all, that really does belong to him. It's his debt, and he's liable for it. Now, we're assuming wife had nothing to do with this debt. Can ABC Bank go after wife's separate property? Well, no. She had nothing to do with the debt. She didn't even know it existed. That would be unfair. How about the community property? Can ABC Bank go after that? Oh, yes. All of it? Yes. Well, wait a minute. Shouldn't it be 50%? No. The law says it would be an undue burden on the creditor, ABC Bank, to try to figure out which half belongs to husband and which half belongs to wife. So the way that's resolved is ABC Bank can go after all of the community property. So since community property includes wages, that means ABC Bank can garnish wife's wages, even though she had nothing to do with the debt. Gee, that seems a little rough. Well, that's the way the law is. Now, if husband goes through a bankruptcy and he gets rid of his obligation to ABC Bank, ABC Bank cannot touch his separate property, and it can't touch any of the community property because the Bankruptcy Code, Section 524A3, says the community property that's acquired afterwards is protected. So ABC Bank can't go after wife's wages, can't go after any of the community property. the only possible thing ABC Bank could do is go after wife's separate property. But if she never had any obligation on the debt, well, then that's not going to happen. There is a good argument then for the couple filing together if they can, because then you don't have to worry about all this, because some creditors are unfamiliar with the ins and outs of community property law. And so the creditor might just decide, well, I can't go after the husband. I'm going to go after the wife because she didn't file for bankruptcy. And then it creates the extra layer of having to contact the creditor and explain that the discharge of husband protects the community property of wife as well. Now, if the creditor simply refuses to comply, well, that sort of contumacy is met with a lawsuit in the bankruptcy court. But we always try to resolve this amicably before we go to the bankruptcy court. So, in sum, generally speaking, if you don't file with your spouse, you won't be liable for your spouse's debts after your spouse gets the discharge, for the most part, unless the creditor has a good argument to say it can go after your separate property.